What's up, guys? It's Chris. Welcome to GHP News. So I was poking around earlier in the day and saw one of my posts earlier in the week talk about ring gaps. So I figured, yeah, let's talk ring gaps. Now there are formulas to find ring gap, and then there are proper ring gap for stock engines. And so on and so forth. We're going to talk about forced induction because that's primarily what I deal with, unless I'm building a stock engine. And then you just Google search for stock or this engine stock ring gap, and then you'll eventually find it. Right now, I guess I'll start with the Nippon CSS block. I haven't ringed anything yet. I haven't gapped those rings yet, but I was curious as to what the rings were going to read with the overbore and whatnot. So being 81.5 millimeter. So I went in there the other day and I put the top ring in one of the cylinders, and it came out. It's like 16 thousandths. So going off of the calculations for boost, this is what I came up with roughly. Now it's your millimeter, your bore millimeters converted to inches times 0.006 for the top ring, and that same thing with your bore to inches times 0.007 for the secondary ring. So it used to be that the secondary ring was considered to be the second level ring was going to be tighter than the top, but they changed that after after some years of research, because they figured that the second ring being bigger than the top ring would help alleviate stress and pressure between the rings, which would lead to less chances of failure of ringland. So for that, to clear that up, yes, the second ring is bigger than the first ring. So for the top ring, instead of doing the point, okay, so for another way to calculate it is 0.006 for the first ring, or some people like to do 0.0065. I guess it's kind of be on your preferences based on how much boost you plan to be running, how often you plan on being in high boost, and plan on being on high temperatures. If the car's gonna be daily with some high level driving, or if it's gonna be high level driving all the time. This is gonna be a pump gas, supercar. So I'm planning to shoot for as close to 500 as I can get. If I can hit 480, I'm happy. I'll cut it there. But I do plan on, even though I'll most likely beat on the car at least once a day, or take it up into higher boost levels once a day, the chances are this is most likely going to be daily driven. So I didn't want to go too crazy on the gaps, because I didn't figure it's going to see high boost levels on a very regular basis. So I did, instead of doing the 0.65, I did the multiplier times 0.006 for the first ring, and that gives you around 19 thousandths. So, and then 0.007 for the second ring. I think it landed around 22.4, or no, not 22.4, 0.0024, 244. So, or 224. Shit, I'm sorry. So what I decided is I'm going to do 19 thousandths for the top, the first ring, and 22 thousandths for the secondary ring. So yeah, that's what I use to determine my ring gap. And I've also determined I don't want to go too big on ring gap, because it's going to be more of a daily driven, normal speeds type thing. And even though I don't think you would lose all kinds of oil, I just don't want it to consume more oil than necessary if I'm not going to be up there in boost all the time. So, and then I guess I'll show you what I used, what I gapped the single cam rings to. Now, I will admit that I kind of fucked up a bit on this. I kind of went on the bigger side, but going back and thinking about it and really justifying it, I figured that the bigger ring gap won't be such a bad idea, because when this thing is in full boost, it's probably going to be boosted a lot. It's probably going, because it's probably going to need a lot of boost to get to the power levels that I'm going to be comfortable with or happy with. Well, of course, you know, that also depends on turbo size too, but I still figure that this engine is going to be under much more stress than a B series will, because it's so small. So I did allow for a bigger ring gap. So anyway, and this is also why I say using your ring gap to determine if your bore is too big or whatnot. Also, your ring gaps don't have to be perfect. You can go over thousandths of an inch and it won't be that big a deal. I would even say 2/1000ths of an inch, and it won't be that big a deal. I think like if you're looking at stock ring specs, if you're still gonna look at stock ring gaps, I think the D16, the top ring calls for like 0.0006 thousandths of an inch upwards to 0.0012. So 12 thousandths of an inch. I will admit that I have run ring gaps as loose as 17 on the top and 19 on the second. Now the secondary ring allows for more wiggle room. I think it's like 0.8 thousandths of an inch or 8 thousandths of an inch to 18 thousandths of an inch. So the 19 isn't that big a gap, but it's still a decent enough gap between the top, first and second, to have the regular pressure release. So I think that with that secondary ring being right within specs, that it kind of like balanced out that extra gap that the top one had. But this is why people tell you you got to bore over and stuff when you're doing a rebuild, so that way you can guarantee the most perfect seal you can get with your rings, which of course is a great thing. But my thing is kind of like when I use the rings to judge how distorted and or worn the cylinders are. Obviously, if you have way too big of a ring gap, like if I've dropped in a top ring and I'm looking at a 19 or a 20 on stock rings, then I wouldn't use that engine to try and run like that. I would have it bored over. But the 17, I wasn't so uncomfortable with that wear that I felt I needed to send it to a machine shop. So anyway, to talk about what I determined for ring gap on the Vitara setup. I dropped all of them in. When I dropped them all in, I got honestly, I don't know how well you can see that. It looks weird to me. Anyway, they're 19. when I measured them, it was like it was too loose on the fucking gap tool for it to be 18. It was a little bit on the tight side of 19. So it was probably, the ring gap for the first ring was probably closer to an 18.5, but because I don't double up feeler gauges to try and get that close to exact thousandths of an inch, I just went ahead and called it 19. I rounded up and called it 19. Now, because like I was saying, I was allowing for more ring gap for the Vitara than I did for the B series. If you do the calculations that I calculated the bore, as I went off stock bore calculations, 75 millimeters, converted over, I think it's 2.95 inches, and then I multiplied 2.95 inches times, was it 0.0065, and that measurement came out as 19 thousandths. So the ring measuring out to 19 thousandths, or my calculation of 19 thousandths, is right about where it would need to be anyway for boost. So perfect, landed right where I wanted to be at, right on the money there. And so now, where I say I kind of fucked up a little bit is on the secondary ring. The secondary ring, I was getting like pretty much like 18s across the board. The secondary rings, they did vary a little bit more, but I guess I can chalk that up to human error. I think they were all close enough to where I could say they're around 18 thousandths of an inch themselves. So I gapped them, and normally I like to keep them within like 3 thousandths of an inch between themselves, between the ring, not to go too broad on the spectrum between the rings, but I took off a little bit more material than I wanted to on the very first ring, and I gapped it out to 25 thousandths, so 0.025. So I think my general rule of thumb I've kept is like never more than 0.6 of an inch like gap between the two, because I think that's the range that you get generally when you're looking at stock rings or whatnot. So 19, 21, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it was right there at the limit. So what I was doing is I was aiming for 24. So I wound up getting 25, 24, 25, and 24. And it's you know, it's kind of hard to always hit it exact. So that's one of those things where, like I'm pretty sure I already said in the video, where you don't have to worry about freaking out if you go over 1/1000th of an inch. So me aiming for 24 and hitting 25 on 2 of them, I'm not losing my shit over that. So yeah. Now, am I saying that that's exactly what you have to bore for all your engines, or if you're gonna, like, that's the thing, you know, too, like when somebody asks me, what do you gap the Vitara to or whatnot, it's like it really does depend. It depends. Like there's the safe methods you can go for, which is a generic one, like I told you, which is be bore times 0.6 of an inch or times 0.7 of an inch, and you can do it like that and leave it like that, and you should be fine. Or like on me, in my circumstances, I know I'm pushing for the mid to high 400s on this engine, so I expected a lot of boost to be in play here. So I took the liberty of making a little bit more on this, on the open side. But but once again, I wouldn't have gapped them that much. I would have gapped them probably at 23 if I had not fucked up. But that just goes to show how fast that little grinder wheel can take off material from the piston ring. So you got to really be careful when you're gapping it. Like even if you think that like 1, 2, 3, 4, like that can't be that much. You do 4 fucking solid rotations and you really got a good grip on the ring. Pull that son of a bitch out, stick it back in the bore, and check it. Like 1/1000th of an inch is, okay, and I might even stretch it to 0.2 of an inch sometimes, but you really don't, you don't want to get too inconsistent with your ring gaps. Anyway, so this is just kind of a generalization. This is, like I said, you can use that formula for your boosted engines. If you want to check it for that on, for NA or whatnot, you can dig around. There's charts that you can find on Google Images that'll show you force induction, NA, octane, different octanes or whatnot. And remember, this is just like a generic rule of thumb for this, because there's a lot of things that come into factor, like the ring material or whatnot. So it is always best, like if you really, really, really want to be particular, to call the manufacturer of the rings and see what they tell you to go by, to be 100% safe and sure. If you really are one of these people that are stickler by the books. Me personally, I use the generic chart, and I've never ever so far haven't had an issue with oil consumption or whatnot. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. And so there, hopefully, like I've talked about it before, in my engine building videos, like how to determine ring gap or whatnot, or how I check my cylinders to make sure they're not too worn. It is, it's one of those common sense things, because if your ring gap comes out to be like super huge, then there's two things that's either happen. Like either you got the wrong rings from the manufacturer, or your bores are super worn. Either super worn or the engine's overboard and you just didn't know. That's the one thing that kind of sucks about buying a bare block, unless you're going to go there with a dial bore gauge, already measured out to where it needs to be to check it. You're not really going to know if it's overboard unless you do something like this. Yeah. Or if you're like me and you have oversized pistons on hand stashed somewhere, so you can just check real quick. Oh, that doesn't fit, so we're good. Or this does fit, that's not good. It's But yeah, and even for cylinder taper, you can still check, because all you gotta do is push that ring a little bit further down the line and double check and see where the sizes change. So yeah, of course the dial bore gauge is the most proper and precise thing to do, but the rings don't really lie. I one time got a set of rings that were huge on the gap, and I was like, whoa, this is like super huge gap. I can look down there and I can fucking do like a Judy chop through the ring. I was like, damn, these dudes sent me the wrong fucking rings. And then I called them, or I contacted them. I'm like, hey, you guys sent me the wrong rings, man. I need to get this taken care of. And the guy was like, nah, we're pretty sure we sent you the right rings. I'm like, nah, I'm pretty sure you didn't, because the gap is enormous. And the guy, and see, the thing is, the reason why I was convinced, you know, of what this was, because I pulled stock pistons out of this. I tore it down, and I pulled stock pistons out of this block. So I was like, damn, you know, they had to have sent me the wrong rings. They must have sent me the wrong rings. And then what I wound up doing is like, I was like, one of those days where I was just bored standing around. I went back there, pulled the ring out, and went to another B series block I had, and stuck it in there, and boom, the ring was right on point. So what does that mean? That means that the rings were the right size and the block was overworn. So what I did was I stashed that block and never used it. As a matter of fact, I think I want to give that block away. It was a B16. Kind of wish I hadn't now that I'm not 100% against born over. And particularly a B16 block, because the B16 blocks are probably one of the few that I'd be willing to send to a machine shop, you know, without too much fuss, because the fact that B16 blocks are not very easy to come by anymore. And when you do find them, people want an arm and leg for them. I still think the B16 is overrated too, but still, just saying. And in that case, if it was like a B18 or a D16 or whatever, and you know the gap reveals that it's too fucking big and it's overworn and needs to be born over, then probably just throw that son of a bitch in the back corner and go buy another engine for $50. But again, it's everybody's preference. So yeah, hopefully this just helps guide you through using the cheating ring system to help you see where your bore is at, and also helps you determine to, you know, figure out and calculate how you're gonna gap your rings for whatever setup you have. All right, guys. Social media links are in the description below. And if you got any questions, hit me up. I'll answer as soon as I can. And peace. Thanks for watching.